This is Life Lessons Lounge, and I'm Igina Gerazi. Here, we explore diverse life stories and the wisdom they hold. Let's delve into the stories that shape us, teach us, and connect us all. Welcome. Today, you'll hear the story of Kat Burns. Kat is a creative alchemist, energy, and sound healer. So, we talk about her journey to spirituality, creativity, music, faith, and how important self love is and has been throughout her journey, and also serving her clients well. And as well as how important it is to bring all and heal all parts of ourselves that we have lost. And Kat is inspiring us to go after what we know to be true about us and not what we're conditioned to believe. So, really wish for you to enjoy this and take the most of this learning that will serve you best in your present and in your future. Enjoy. Hey, I actually looked into your tattoo, the kismet tattoo that you have on your. Yes, I want to hear the story behind it.
Ooh, this is an interesting story, actually. A friend of mine did this in San Diego, but it has a big meaning as far as like my experience of myself. Kismet in Turkish, is kind of the word destiny. Like I don't, or fate. The word in English is similar, but for me, it relates in the Turkish Arabic because when I was younger, I was married when I was really young to a Turkish man, and in the Turkish language, they always say like kismet yani, like it's fate, like it's destiny, like they kind of really leave it up to God. And at that point in my life, I was super duper young, like when I married my husband, my ex-husband, and I really had I was at odds with my faith and my religion and my experience. And so as life unfolded, I think I got this probably when I definitely was in Los Angeles already. So I think probably maybe 2014 or something like that. But the way my life had kind of unfolded up until that point, it really was like, wow, there is some sort of fated, destined sort of experience that you're having. And if you fast forward now, it's 10 years later, I see that like tenfold. So it's quite funny because, in Islam, tattoos are not necessarily, they're haram, which is like not kosher, basically. But for me, having it here is just always a nice reminder of like, it's kismet, kismet yani. Like that's always something that comes to my mind. So does that explain it? It's very
Yeah,
like tied to, there's deep meaning for me as far as my own journey for sure.
that's beautiful. Yeah, we have the same expression in Albania. We say that a lot. Mekismet.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Yep.
let's hope
Like,
whatever destiny says in that way. That's
exactly.
beautiful.
And it's a word in English that people have heard of, but it's not a very commonly used word. It's like kismet. It's just not something that a lot of that I had ever heard prior. So when it was so commonly used in Turkey and during my time there, I was like wow, like there is a real element to faith that I can't necessarily relate to. Like this is not in my hands. And so now when I look at my life and what I'm doing now, what I'm creating now as a co-creation, like with the universe, with source, with God, with whatever you want to call it, I'm really like, wow, this is what my path is meant for. And to me, that's like kismet yani. Like, it's perfect.
I feel like the title of this podcast will be Kismet Yani.
Could be.
Yeah, but I really want to hear about your journey when it comes to faith.
Mm.
How has faith developed for you?
Oh gosh, that's a really interesting question. I'll say this. Yeah, if you had told me 20 or 30 years ago that I would now be doing the things that I'm doing, living in Portugal, doing Reiki and energy healing and sound healing and mentoring on creativity and owning my own business and just having this really wild life that's full of transformation, but also like a lot of getting myself out of my own way and really getting to the core of who I am, I would have been like, okay, I'm going to opt out. Like I literally just 2 days ago said to my friend, I wish like could I just stop this life? Like there's just so much. Sometimes it's just there's just so much to it. Um, my my whole conversation about faith, and like I was raised in a Roman Catholic family, in the East Coast of the U.S. in Connecticut, and I went to church every Sunday, and I have my baptism and my confirmation, and I've done all the things. Yeah, and I always was at odds with my faith. Like I always had this like very, what's the word I'm kind of looking for? It was like a checks and balances. If you were good, God would give you good things. If you were bad, God would punish you, kind of things. And I think a lot of people probably can relate to that, and especially in certain yeah, Catholic religion is one of them, but I think in certain religions in general, there is like this overwhelming sense of guilt as of being human, but with Catholicism, it's very potent because Eve ate the apple or whatever that fruit was, and the whole, like there's just a lot of it's heavy energy. So there really was this like checks and balances thing. Like if you're a good girl, you'll have good things. If you're a bad girl, you'll have bad things happen. And so I spent a lot of my life trying to pray for the good things and avoid the bad things. But of course, what was I doing? I was like praying for the bad things not to happen, i.e., thinking about the bad things all the time. Like, like doing that very specific, like manifestation practice that I now know, which is like, what you think about, you bring about. It was one of those like, so while I had a pretty, I would say, normal childhood in a young, like, or a small town in Connecticut, like I had a good family, just pretty normal for what I imagine. I always felt like I didn't fit, and this part of religion was very. There was a lot of push and pull for me. It was always a struggle. So when I met my husband at the time, I was like 18 or 19. I was so young when I got married. But when I met him, he had full faith in his religion,
Mhm.
and I questioned the hell out of mine. Like I was always like, what the, like, why is this? Why am I so up against myself? Why are there so much contention inside of this? So I really struggled a lot with that, and witnessing him and his family, and seeing other religions and other cultures experience religion, it really opened my eyes to like, wow, and living, like I lived in Turkey briefly when I was 19. And I just saw that like life could be another way than the way that it was. And that was like the first real time that I had a sense of like, it wasn't America, it wasn't the 90s, it was like, it was what, 2003 is when I went there. So it was right after September 11th. And, the war on Islam was starting to become a thing in the US. And like, it was a very strange time for me to be like, yeah, I'm going to go live abroad. Bye. But
That's also courageous. So
it
I
was,
want to
but
acknowledge your courage as well.
I'm following love. Like I got real, like, flighty on the I'm following love, but I didn't know that it was the catalyst for the light bulb to kind of turn on, experiencing faith differently, which I think catapulted me into the next, I would say 25 years of, or yeah, what is we now 2020. So it's like, yeah, 20
Okay.
years 20 years, literally. Like 20 years of me really looking into what faith is, and now come full circle. I have a very, very deep connection with God or the universe or source, whatever you want to call it, my higher self. I, fully feel connected to the collective consciousness, and that we all have our own role that we're supposed to play, and whatever commitment we make is what I get to live into, And so it's just a very different experience. Like I feel like God is on my side. Everything works for me. Like we have a dialogue going, as opposed to before it was like, please let me be good. It's a very different thing. So
Mm.
does that answer your question? It's a
Yes.
long question.
It seems like that opening to a different culture, that opening to a different way of believing, it has had such an impact on your faith.
Thank
Yeah.
you. I mean, I think one thing all, I say Americans, but all people really should do is just go live outside of their culture for a certain period of time. Like I think that's something that especially I see. I can only speak for Americans because that's what I know, right? But seeing how so many people get so caught up in what the world is like, if they just like went somewhere else and saw what it looked like in another place at another time, I think it would really shift the context, I think I was grateful. I didn't know at the time, that that was so impactful for me at 19 years old, but it really changed the way that I view the world. So when I was like living in Los Angeles and feeling burnt out and was like, well, I really just want to still travel while I'm still young. Like it didn't seem impossible to go live amongst other countries and other cultures. And it didn't seem impossible to go travel. And now, I've been in Portugal for 5 years, basically, which is like, if you told me I would live in another country, I would be like, yeah, you're out of your mind. It's not a thing, but it's a thing.
That's amazing. And how did you get into sound healing?
Sound healing is my newest adventure. Um, but it really stems from like this whole, I would say, upbringing of music that was so heavily ingrained in me. When at the time I met my husband, I was playing music regularly. Like I was going to school to learn how to play music and for university essentially. But my story with music was very strange. I started playing instruments when I was 8.
Mm,
I played the violin. I was terrible. Then I started playing the flute, and then I learned a little bit of the piano. But I really started playing percussion when I was about 11 or 12, and the marimba, which is like a piano with sticks, we'll call it. Like
mm,
that was my instrument of choice. That's the one that really stuck. I played
right.
it all the time. I loved it. I was really good at it, which helped because, once you're good at something, people are like, go, go, do the thing. So music became quite a big part of my world as a teenager. I would audition to be in like the all New England bands and the all state bands, all of like the higher up kind of where they combined the best kids in the schools to kind of come together and form like a super band, to play an orchestra. So I played a lot of music, but I also did a lot of art as well. But I didn't have as much faith in my art abilities. Like I really wanted to make movies when I was a kid, believe it or not. And I was from a small town in Connecticut. So I kind of gave up on that dream really quickly. I didn't realize that I couldn't actually go to Hollywood and make films and be the next Steven Spielberg, which was what my real dreams were. So music kind of became the thing. But there's this problem with my eyeballs where I can't like it's kind of like dyslexia. I'm not diagnosed dyslexic, as I say it. But what it does is the notes on the music stand kind of jump around on the page. It happens with words too for me a little bit and numbers. So I'm not necessarily wouldn't consider myself like dyslexic, but
Mm,
without the glasses, I was really struggling to read music
mm.
and music, which is like reading for the first time without rehearsing. So I memorized all my music, but then when I went to audition for college, all the people realized that I couldn't sight read, and I didn't tell anybody that I had a problem with my eyes, so I failed like almost all of my auditions.
Oh.
Yeah, so I went to a music school, like a small state school for music, and I wasn't challenged very much.
Mm,
I made friends, and it was a nice time, but I wasn't challenged, so I kind of gave up on it quite quickly. And at the same time, I met my ex-husband, and I was just like, nope. Like he came from Turkey on a student visa to learn English, and by the end of the time he was there, we were like kind of hooked. So I was like, I'm going. Like I'm just gonna go be with him, which was ridiculous at the time, but it ended up happening. And then I brought him back to the U.S. And by that point, I had quit music. And then it kind of poked me in the back of the head for the next 20 years. So I started doing sound healing here in Portugal. I think I first heard of it probably back in like 2016.
mm,
Understanding what it was, and always just loved the sound. Like the sound of Tibetan bowls is just so magical for me. But I started listening to a lot of YouTube videos of certain frequencies when I would want to concentrate, and I would notice it would really help me get into that like flow state of consciousness when I was trying to get work done. So then when I came to Portugal, I started doing a lot of live sound baths. A couple of our friends do sound healing as well. And so I started going pretty regularly. And it was really then that I started seeing how deep you could go into meditation and what could come up if you focused on certain things and like how it really affected your brain chemistry. All the while, from a holistic standpoint, from a well being standpoint, was learning about how different frequencies react to different body parts. Like
mm.
all of our bodies vibrate. Everything in the universe vibrates, right? Like we don't really think about ourselves as just like these like shaky things, but everything has a certain frequency to it. And so our body parts collectively vibrate around a certain frequency. So the heart vibrates around about so and so, 432 hertz or something like that. And then the liver does another one, and the kidneys do another one. So they all vibrate at different frequencies, approximately. Individual people is different but it's about that. So when you hear certain frequencies that are attuned to the same vibration, can actually shift the chemistry, physically shift the chemistry. There's this really amazing thing if you look up, it's called semantics, and it's the physical manifestation of what sound looks like. So if you put like sand on a speaker, like on a flat surface, and play the speaker and the frequency, you'll see patterns like geometrical shapes, like over the sound. And it's what happens in our body, in our cells. And so once I started learning about that, I was just fascinated by it. And so I took a sound healing course here, in addition to learning about tuning forks and different things like that. And after that, I was just like, okay, I'm going to do this. And it brought back my previous musical experience, because I do know, my music theory is like a language. It's still in the back of my brain somewhere, even though I haven't used it really in 20 years. And it feels so aligned to come back to that place where it's like, I can share what I grew up with and what I know as a healer. And now I can actually work on it from a technical standpoint of like, let's see what this frequency does. Let's see. And I'm still training. Like I probably won't be finished training for another couple of years, but I'm definitely learning as much as I can, soaking it up like a sponge, because I think it's fantastic, especially when it comes to creativity and bringing yourself into, that theta wave state of real meditation, or if you want to get really focused, or like there's different ways that you can stimulate that kind of stuff, and that really helps when you need to be creative or you need to get a project done, that sort of thing.
That's so interesting. And what I'm curious about is, for anyone who doesn't know, I've experienced sound healing only as a participant, so I don't know much about it, like how the whole theory of how it works. And thank you for sharing a little bit also, how it works even on a cellular level. I'm curious about, how do you prepare yourself in a way to meet the people where they are, and also to know exactly which frequency of sound to use in your sessions?
So that's kind of like where my intuitive things come in, right? Like, because like, again, I feel like I'm on the very early stages of what that looks like for me. I'm not even technically trained to play the bowls physically on the body yet, but as I learn and finish going through the trainings that I will take, I will actually be able to do sound therapy, which is like putting the bowls on the body and actually having certain frequencies do things. But because there are these general conditions, or these general vibrations that we kind of know of that stimulate the body in certain ways. And a lot of what I do, actually, it's kind of funny. I pull tarot cards, or I do Reiki to feel where the energetic blockages are, depending on what kind of session it is. So I will pull like a 7-card chakra spread for tarot to kind of, I would say, diagnose in a way, to see what people are dealing with in each of these energetic centers. There's like 12 or 13 or something like that, but there's usually 7 in the Usui Reiki practice that I use. And so depending on what I feel as I'm kind of going through the person's body, that is where I'll know to focus. And then I am just like, the sound bowls could really, because they're tuned to different frequencies, each note can provoke different frequencies depending on where you even hit it. I'm still working on making my collection of like, by the end of my life, I hope to have like a whole room full of sound bowls of every type of frequency you could ever have. I always have said I really wanted to have a music room with a marimba and a piano in it, but now I also see that filled like with a wall of sound bowls as well, because I see that that's what that music room is supposed to look like. So it
Oh,
really
that's going to be like Alice in Wonderland for you.
exactly. Yeah. So
Amazing.
somebody says, like, I'm feeling depressed, or, maybe it's like they're feeling like a lack of creativity, or they're not feeling very grounded. Like, there's, you say, okay, well, if you're not feeling very grounded, we need to look at the root chakra, because the root chakra is all about stability, building your foundation. So it's like, what can we actually do to focus our energy and attention there. So there'll be like a meditation right now that's specific towards grounding into the energy of the earth and feeling stable in your seat wherever you are, like growing your roots into the ground, and then playing a bath, like a sound bath, that's specifically with the intention of helping you stay grounded. And then the meditative, like there'll be bowls and I can guide a meditation into the grounding. So it really just, it's all dependent on the individual and like where they feel they're being blocked, The
And
tarot
what
may
has,
pull something different that you'd ever even know too. So it really is kind of, it's magical actually.
and what has sound healing done for you?
Oh goodness.
What hasn't it done?
Really, it really opened my eyes to it. Well, it brought me full circle, first of all.
Mm,
Like I have a 15-year career as a creative. I've worked as a designer and a creative director and a producer for, for many years, and I burned out quite hard. And I did that after I kind of abandoned music, I'll say. Um, and like I said, it was like always poking me in the back of the head, like, hey girl, like, you're gonna come back to us. But after this whole career that I've had, and I still have, like, I still love to do creative projects, and I'm now working on some of my own film projects and some of my own creative endeavors that I enjoy, my own business as well. um all of that together has made me who I am now, and can kind of lead in the space of creativity and talk to people about what's blocking them and that sort of thing. But bringing back the sound into that, first as a participant, like receiving the sound healing, because it's very therapeutic to be able to go inside and like I've had some major, just like, it really does bring you into the higher realms. Like I hate, and I don't want to get so woo that it, like that it's that it doesn't make sense, but you really can go so high into a meditative, or low into a meditative state, like you so focused into a meditative state that you can really experience the collective consciousness on a different scale. Like, receive images, see pictures, visions, smells, sounds, memories. You can access things that are in the subconscious mind that you didn't realize were running the show. Like, there's plenty of stuff. So I did that as a participant for probably 2 years straight in live sessions before thinking to myself, maybe I should try this. I've always wanted to try it. Maybe I should. And then as soon as I did, I was like, oh God, this is so, like, what was I thinking? Of course, this brings it full circle.
mm. And how, I'm curious about that clarity, right? That moment of clarity when you got like, yes, this is it. How was it for you?
I had taken this weekend course through this amazing group here called Cosmic Gong. I did a class with, the teacher's name is Angelo, and there was a weekend of the week one training that we had. And at the end of it, I came out of it. We did like probably 4 or 5 sound journeys, like during the weekend. He would introduce us to different instruments, and then he would do a journey going into it, so you can like experience it yourself, but also learn how to bring people through a journey, right? That's, they call it a journey, right? And so by the end of the weekend, I was like extremely exhausted and spent. And I ended up, I was dating someone a little bit here and there, and I was hoping to see them and that weekend. And there was a little bit of a miscommunication. Like, I felt this experience that I've always had, this very similar experience in my mind that was kind of like, oh, I'm probably burdening them by bothering him. Like, I just had this like weird self-limiting belief come up inside of me that was like, I'm burdening this person by asking for attention or whatever. And it provoked something inside of me that just like had me break down at the end of, like, mind you, 5 journeys in one weekend is a lot. Anybody that does any kind of healing,
Yeah.
like, it can bring up a lot of stuck emotion. It can really actually like release energetic, stuck emotion. And so after this little breakdown, confrontation that like was a complete fabrication of my mind, the next day I really connected to the fact that there was this wounding that I had in me, this like burden wound that was probably generational, that probably went back years, like to, I was on my dad's side, like my dad, like we had this experience of life being tough, and always feeling like like we're inconvenienced by something, and that I was being sing. Um, and it really like it kind of knocked me out. Like, you cannot be the person that you really want to be, and you cannot serve the way you really want to serve if you walk around thinking that you're going to upset people and be a burden to people inside of the healing conversation that you're being called to have with people. And so that clarity, like that was like, you really cannot serve without having that wound lifted. Like, you have to let that go. And I didn't necessarily put two and two. I went the whole weekend when we were doing the sound healing. I was like, yep, I know the theory of this. I know why. Like, oh, yep, I know that vibration. I know this instrument. Like, I knew all the things, and I was so lit up. But after it was seeing how 5 journeys in one weekend, with the paradox of what I knew and what I was learning and like all that, and finally seeing like, you cannot serve without having this kind of
Experience.
clarity, you know? You can't come from a place of lack to serve your clients. You can't come from, like, I mean, anybody can come from whatever place they're in. We're human, but if you're really setting out to do what you desire to do, you actually can't serve from this place. You have to fill your own cup. You have to realize that you are enough and that you are here to provide something. And that,
Exactly.
like, that was it. It took a few days to integrate. The situation resolved itself with the guy. I saw myself like, if this was what you were meant to give me, thank you. Like, that was what I basically said to him. Like, if this was, it's okay to let this go. If I was supposed to experience this with you so I could have this breakthrough for myself, then that's what I need. And it was. And then after that was like, something shifted. And ever since then, it's like the clear pathway is present, which is pretty great.
That's so beautiful. It seems like it served the purpose also to bring back some parts of you that not only, that needed healing, but it feels like lost, and it's to have the complete sense of self.
It really, it was so, but I think about, like, this is the way when it gets really cool to now know that, like, I've not only healed something for myself that's like been holding me back, but like that it stops in my with my lineage
Mm.
here, like that it won't carry forward because I was able to see it, that I did come full circle and come back to my roots and come back to the thing that really lit me up when I was younger. Like, I liked playing music because it was great. I also liked it because people told me I was good at it, and I had confused the two. They were very interwoven. Like, my self-acceptance, my self-love came from the validation that I was good at something. But the truth is, like, I still enjoyed the thing. I had just really mixed the wires when it came to like what my desire was, which is why I think for 20 years it was like, "Dee, dee, 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 dee. Hey, we want you to play music." And so being able to come back in this way and really open up to like a full circle experience of it was like, oh girl, like this is what's been missing.
Looking back, doesn't it seem like these were all stepping stones to where you need to be right now, right?
100%. It went exactly the way it was supposed to go, which is, again, coming back to the coming back to where we first started. Yeah. Kismet.
Beautiful, beautiful. So, what's in your bucket list now?
Ooh, a friend of mine sent me this there's a couple, there's these great people I follow online that are doing like these massive sound baths on the beach, which is definitely like a someday thing that I would love. But also like these people hanging from the ceilings in these little cocoon type things, like rocking to sound healing. It's just incredible. I really would like to continue to help bring energy healing overall to the mainstream. I think it's now's the time. I think there are more burned out people than ever. There are more people that suffer from, I think, especially as, I mean, I can only speak to women because that's who I am. I'm a woman. That's the only thing I know. But I would say that the majority of the women I talk to, just the couple women I was talking to yesterday, like, were saying, I did what I was told I should do. I did what everyone told me to do. I followed my career because, like, I was good at it, or I got praise, or that was
Or
what my
you're at the right place at the right time.
right, exactly. Like, it was just like somebody, it wasn't like the driver was me. It was like the driver was the circumstances because I was told I should. We have, I think, as women have a tendency to be hyper in our masculine, trying to do. Like, I can be this, I can do this, I can, I can do it because I need to prove to myself that I'm as worthy as a man doing it, or whatever. And I really grew up that way, very, very much so. But I think as women get older, and especially the new generation of women coming in, realizing that, like, I can actually step into the desire that I have from the get go, instead of the thing that was the practical thing for me to do. And then now in my 40s or 30s or whatever, 50s, whatever the time span is, to change careers and go, oh, I did this, burn myself to a crisp, like I have no energy, no heart in the game. I've sold myself. I have no boundaries. I have people please, like all that, like depleted energy, that people can now go, it can be another way than the way that it is. And
Yeah.
so that's really where I see it going, is showing it more to the mainstream, letting people know that this is a healing modality, that or that we can use, pseudoscience type things, even though sound healing is a science, I would say, but there is scientific evidence. But like Reiki or Tarot, for example, like they're hard to find real concrete evidence to a lot of these things. But I think that there's a lot of non-concrete evidence that exists in the world. And I think a lot of people are now becoming more privy to that, you know? And so I want to keep bringing that in. Like I'm giving tarot readings right now for people in business, and people are like, tarot reading for business. And I'm like,
Exactly.
yeah.
How open are people to that?
Well, that's the thing, is that a lot of these, like, women who are stepping into their entrepreneurship, who really want to make sure that they trust their intuition. It's like, for me, tarot is a guide to confirm the intuitive hits I already have.
Mm.
And the only time tarot is not almost 100% accurate for me is when I'm attached to the way I want it to look. So I have to be really neutral. But if I just pull cards because I'm curious about something, or I want some guidance with something, then I'm almost 100% of the time, which is probably more probable than most of my bettings on things in my life, but they're mostly accurate as far as like where I know I need to go. And so that extra confirmation is always super helpful.
Mm.
And I think that more people are starting to feel the gut reaction or the heart reaction or something inside of them, the intuition, whatever it is, that's like, oh, I feel this, but I'm afraid, which, because the fear is totally normal. But if you can have another way to get that confirmation, if you can feel into, you know, like, oh, I trust my gut, like, oh, what happens if we actually just trust what we feel, then who knows what will be available for us. And I think a lot of people are stepping into that. So for me, in the future, I see a lot of people using energy healing tools as a way to get back to themselves and to follow the path that's their most creative, their most lit up, their most aligned path, and their mission and purpose, in where they feel like they're going. Those are my big picture
Mm.
things.
I'm curious, when you draw tarot cards, like how much can you distinguish in terms of your energy and the other persons that you're drawing the cards for? Like, when is it yours and when it's theirs? Like, when are the energies meshed? Like, how do you make sure that it's for them and not, you influence somehow? I don't know. How do you make that discernment?
So I don't consider myself like a psychic or a medium or anything like that. I use tarot cards simply as interpretation based on my relationship to my intuition. I usually, like I said, as a confirmation. And I always let people know that they're subject to interpretation. So whatever I am saying is based on what you could hear it completely different than my intention. As long as it makes sense for you, then that feels right. So I try to explain what I know about the cards, because I'm still very new. Like, this is only I've only been doing tarot for a couple of years, and I just started doing it, professionally, I would say. Tarot is like a whole language. It's like music, or it's like HTML, or it's like Spanish. Like, it is a whole language. The signs and the symbols and the meanings and the interpretations, and they do vary in between the decks, between the artists that made them, between the styles of the decks. Like, so it's a very, like, there's astrology linked to it, there's Kabbalah linked to that, there's so much, you know So I am like a baby fish when it comes to that. So when I see the spread, I will tell what I know the meaning to be based on my intuitiveness and the knowledge I know about the cards. And then if anything else comes to me, then I share that. Usually I ask people, which is something that's, I would say, I want to do a couple readings where I don't ask people anything to see where it goes. But I usually ask people about their current circumstances a little bit. And then I ask questions specifically about the circumstances that they're sharing. Like, what is the predictable future for this? Or, what's in so and so's highest and best interest? And asking those like yes or no type questions, or, like give us the past, present, future of this situation. So it's a lot more like this is just what the cards say. And I can give you my advice, but my advice is more like my mentoring advice, my coaching advice, my like, this is what I think based on what you already are feeling. And so then it's kind of like a mix of the practical and the intuitive, the woo, the esoteric, like whatever. It's a little bit of a mix, because what they receive from me is usually just the messages that I can hear, because I'm a little bit of a clair audio thing and a clairsentient kind of thing. But I just hear what I hear, and I share what I feel like I need to share with them. And so it's not necessarily, it's based on interpretation, but it definitely is from a guided place to the best of my ability. And and then I always say that I'm a work in progress, but I don't really know. I think because I'm calling cards for another person,
Mm.
that this is my energy asking the question, and the card, I feel like my connection to my cards and my intuition, like they know, or God knows, or the universe or whatever knows that I'm going to understand them this way, and that is the message that's supposed to be given. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
It's like, it's very like, I don't, it's hard to explain on a real tangible level, but the reality is if I get this spread, I'm just going to know what there is to say if I take a moment to listen.
Mm.
And so it's like, take it or leave it, take what works and leave the rest. I think any good tarot reader will tell you, take what works and leave the rest. Any good, anything, any coach, any mentor, any consultant, any guide, take what works and leave the rest. I think it's the same when it comes to tarot. Because why not have a little confirmation? If you're feeling the pull towards needing that confirmation maybe is available to you. Or, maybe it's the fear that's running the show. And so there's that fear that you're sitting with, and that shows up in the cards. And it's like, I was right, because we're right every time, right?
That's so nice. Yeah, I love that, to have a confirmation and get what you need from all of it. Beautiful. I hear your life that it's a lot also about creativity, music, healing, creation. So how does all fit together in a way with what you're doing now?
Well, I think it's kind of like what you said earlier. It's now it's now the culmination of all the parts being put together. I think what I'm really here to do is to serve the collective, to raise the consciousness of how we handle our working lives when it comes to our creativity and our purpose, and leaning into what really matters to us. So, like, I did all the things, I would always say I did all the things backwards, like I got married when I was 19 years old or 20 years old. Like it took me 8 years to finish college. I went to 4 different schools. Like I started traveling before I retired, had kids, like all the things. I just did a lot of stuff backwards. I would say backwards. It was exactly the way it was supposed to.
Exactly.
But, in the process, like I got a great, I would say bout, but a great, like I gathered a ton of knowledge along the way, and a lot of practical experience, and being able to kind of use that and shed that light, and seeing my own struggle, my own journey. Like, I was working in Los Angeles for 5 years before starting to travel, and I was sacrificing so much of my well-being and my happiness and my health and my soul for other people's work when really I just had desire to do something for myself. Like, I finally, I wrote my first script when I was 39. It's still in a revised state right now. It's on the shelf, and I have another film project that I'm also working on, talking to a lawyer next week about. But like I'm finally now doing the thing that I wanted to do when I was 13, which is figuring out how to make an impact, which is making creative projects that make my heart sing, which is, stepping into this leader that I had never experienced. I always said, oh, I want to be the next Steven Spielberg. Well, yeah, like I am putting myself in a place now where I can be an executive producer on the films that I want and also start to shift what that looks like. And in the meantime, let people see and know that with the right tools and the right determination and the right, mindset, that you actually can step into what you really want to do and who you really want to be. And I'm living proof of that. I'm far from cooked, I'll say, like I've still, tons of work that I'm still doing every day. But I really see the power in taking our own power back and deciding for ourselves, like, I'm not going to burn myself out any longer. I'm not going to sacrifice my boundaries, sacrifice my health, people please myself into oblivion, like work on other people's dreams and just sacrifice my own. And I think that is really everything that I've learned up until this point, being that creative in a creative services industry who burnt herself to a crisp, leaving the rat race, starting my own thing, figuring out those struggles, and then really coming back to what I love and want to share. I mean, to me,
Oh,
that's right. It's like, who wouldn't want that? It really, I mean,
you're so inspiring to see your journey and to see also like what it has taken you to come back to you and what is it that you really want. And I would love for you to share some advice for anyone who's going through that.
it's, I could spout off for, let's see. Okay. Anybody that's going through it, this is the one thing I remember. It's funny. I'm just being brought back to me, like 2006, being married, commuting to school 2 hours one way to New York City and 2 hours back, sitting in my living room watching Friends episodes, making an art project for school. Like, this is what I'm thinking. And I remember being really unhappy. Like, I had all the things that I had, I was living in a nice house. I had a husband. I was going to one of the best schools in New York for art. Like, I had the car, I had the life. I had all these things that I thought I should have. And I was miserable because I didn't love myself and I didn't know my own value at that point. And I remember the one thing that I had was hope. I
Mm.
was like, it has to be a different way than the way that it is. Whenever people say, oh, it is what it is, it's always just like a little, I'm like, no, nothing is the way that it is. But the truth of the matter is, at that point, the only thing that was driving me was hope. Hope that something will be different, hope that it could be better, hope that it can improve. And so, what I think my biggest piece of advice is, if you are feeling in a place where, shit sucks, excuse my language, but like if it's really, really low and you really do feel like all this exhaustion and burnout and anxiety or whatever, know that that hope is just you, a future you, right? You living into what's actually possible for you, right? Like, we all have the power to change our circumstances. And if that hope exists, like, what would that look like if that hope could be more tangible? Like, what if I just took one action today to move the needle forward? What if I had one conversation with someone today that would help lift, give me a little levity? Listen to one YouTube video, like, do one thing that was creative, like draw, paint, do something that can spark the brain, go for a walk. Like, what is one thing I can do to start to shift the chemistry in my body and to start to heal? Like, one sound bath, like whatever it is, what is one thing I can do to bring the needle forward? And how do I make that not be a hope so much as a knowing that it will shift and it will change? Like, hope, I have so many people have sayings about hope. Hope is everything, or like, it's like, hope is only going to get you so far. But if you know that you have hope that it will change, know that it will and can with your determination and your, your word, tenacity, right? Like, just know that it doesn't have to be hope. It's you're already taking action in that way just by hoping. But if you just do one more thing to move the needle forward, it could be having grace for yourself and your own humanity in that moment for feeling sad. Just hugging yourself and loving on yourself a little bit instead of being like, oh, you're terrible because you're doing that thing in the burned out job that you hate and blah, blah. Like, instead of just beating yourself up, just have that one moment of like, I'm here, I'm doing everything I can, and I know that it's going to get better. Just that one little switch.
Hmm.
It
Yeah,
shifts.
definitely. And what I hear is very much that conversation and connection with self, to hear where are you at this right moment and what is it that you need that I can take care of you.
Totally. It is
Yeah.
that knowing. And it showed up for me as hope. But I've always like that knowing has now since it doesn't occur as hope now. Now it occurs as a real knowing. But I mean, that was 2006, right? It was almost 20 years ago. That was what that experience was like for me. And then I realized that in order to make that hope more than just a hope, I actually had to act on it. But it was part of that was part of it. It was part of me taking those actions was having that hope.
Yeah, it seems like it. So would you say that one of your big life lessons is about faith? What would it be about?
I love that this is where we went with this conversation because
It's
it's
like
like,
it's coming back to the beginning.
yeah, I mean, honestly, like hope and faith kind of go hand in hand, which is a little bit funny, but I I think there for it really is like about faith and about trust, like even when I had the hope and didn't have the faith inside of myself that I was good, I had to trust that there was something else available for me, that it had to be another way. Like I had to trust that there could be another way and that I was being guided. I like to think of life now as a co-creation instead of like it all being on my shoulders. I think that was the hardest part about being raised, in a as a Roman Catholic is like it was like the pressure of the world was on your shoulders to perform in a certain way. The good versus bad, the evil versus, like the right versus wrong. And so when I felt like everything was on my shoulders, there was like a million piles of bricks on my shoulders holding me down, going, you're either good or you're bad, or you're doing the good thing or the right thing or the wrong thing or whatever. That felt so heavy. But when I started to look at it as like, no, no, I trust that I'm being supported, that God does not have conditions. There's no, like there's no stipulation for being human. Everybody has the ability to step into that new timeline, that new iteration of themselves. Like everyone has the opportunity to, even if your circumstances are absolute shit, you still have the opportunity to grow from that and learn from that. And some people's life circumstances are like really awful, and that's also part of life. But knowing that like this is a co-creation, that like I can actually have the faith and the hope and the determination to bring myself to the next place, or know that like I'm being supported and remind myself that all of this is a lesson and that I'm supported. It doesn't seem as pressure. There's not as much of a pressure on the shoulders anymore, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's very
Hey.
clear. It's lovely. What I'm hearing from what you shared, it's you work a lot with creativity and the sound healing. So what projects are coming up for you now? What are you working on now?
So right now I'm actually releasing, I'm gonna say maybe in the next month or two, I'm going to be releasing like a 30-day course to reconnect with your creativity, which is really exciting. And that's basically for people who feel like they're either creatively blocked or creatively burnt out, or, have just done all the things, and are lost, like feeling less fulfilled, feeling like they've kind of lost that drive or that excitement for the thing that they once loved to do. It can be for a person that considers themselves a creative, like a creative services person, or someone who just feels overall like they are lacking creativity in their life. Because I think creativity is our birthright. We all are creative by nature. It is something that exists within us. Like we as women have the ability to create life. I mean, men too, really, if you think about how the whole thing works. But the reality is, like, we actually birth things into being.
Mm.
Every thought that we think, every word that we say, every gesture we make is a creation. If we really get down to it, it is all a product of creation. There's no other way to put it. It's a vibration. It's an energy. It's a creation. So if we can look at ourselves from that perspective, that we have an immense amount of power because we get to create our reality. Everything is perception. Everything is a perspective. Everything is can be shifted or melded or molded. Nothing is set in stone. Everything is constantly vibrating. Right? If we can really get that power, then we can see that we have a lot more authority and autonomy than we thought we did, really.
Mm.
So that course is designed to just reignite your passion and your excitement for being creative. I actually have it linked to 7 tools, which are basically linked to the chakras in the body. So you think about the different energy centers in your body and what you actually need to support each one of them. And inside of the course, we'll have energy healing inside of it. I'm also doing one-on-one creativity mentoring as well, where I do kind of like there's 2 different ways. I do like a question and answer kind of thing. So we do one practical mentoring session and then a follow-up session that's just energy healing to focus on the thing that we were struggling with in the practical
Beautiful.
session. So it's kind of like that. And I want to just give as many sound baths as possible. So I do a sound bath here in Lisbon at a yoga studio. I'm starting to do them in my home and online. And yeah, it's all going to be like just getting all that out to and my own creative stuff, like movie projects, which will come out someday.
Yes, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I have a couple of things in the couple irons in the fire of some really cool things. One script that I wrote myself, and then another project that's an adaptation of a book. And so, yeah, working on getting the rights sorted so I can start shopping around to share it because it's a really cool story. So, yeah,
Oh,
that's like, how I can look at how to fulfill my real creative needs. Everything that I can share is in the realm of creativity, but I also want to fulfill on what I feel like meeting my creative needs is. And that is wanting to not only make a film, but actually kind of rework the way films are made. Because I think as beautiful as it can be to see an amazing film, a lot of the conditions of the filmmaking process are very not fulfilling and toxic. Like Hollywood, the world of Hollywood and the process of what it takes to make film, especially for the below the line crew people, it's a very challenging process. And so I would like to try to evaluate that when I actually get to do that myself and to make projects in a different way, hopefully
hmm.
someday. That's down the line.
Well, I really look forward to us going to the movies and see your movie.
Oh yeah, me
Hopefully
too.
very soon.
Give it a couple of years, but I definitely see it.
Great. Well, Kat, thank you so much. I have really enjoyed you sharing your story and all the wisdom and everything, like the connection to creativity, to healing, to sound bath, to everything that you had to share, into kismet and hope and trust and destiny, all of it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Megina. It was such a pleasure.
Thank you for being with us in the Life's Lessons Lounge. Remember, every story has its wisdom. Join us next time for more insights and inspiration. Until then, keep learning, keep growing, and keep sharing your own story.